Compass Mining is your trusted partner in Bitcoin mining. Whether you're investing in one machine or thousands, our customizable solutions are tailored to meet your needs. We are your experts in Bitcoin mining, offering a platform where individuals and businesses can purchase hardware, host machines, and access a range of ancillary Bitcoin mining services. We also specialize in large-scale site development and data center operations. Discover more at compassmining.io and see how we can power your success today. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the official home of power mining analysis. Just when we thought things were moving in our direction in terms of the price of Bitcoin, some of the macro trends, adoption, and of course the Bitcoin miner earnings, we get hit this morning with a big negative press release. BYBIT has been hacked. $1.4 billion worth of Ethereum stolen from the exchange, marking the biggest crypto hack by dollar value ever in history. This is the exact kind of press release we did not need in the Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining space going into the weekend, and that's what we're going to be unfortunately covering in today's video. Before we get into it, take a second, hit the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel, specifically in getting this content to other people like you who may find value. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know how you're reacting to this morning's news, whether you're buying, selling, or holding your stocks, if you think this is going to be a long-term impact on the sector, and your outlook for the remainder of 2025. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, Anthony. Well, unfortunately, we've had to change plans a little bit this morning on the podcast. We woke up, things were looking good. We were texting each other as Bitcoin was surpassing 98, 99,000, getting close to that $100,000 US milestone once again, and then blasted with some big news from BYBIT on a hack involving 1.4 billion worth of Ethereum. We're going to come on to that in a second, but boy, can this sector sure change quickly. Just when we think we're taking a step forward, you get two steps back. Bitcoin mining stocks have reacted very strongly to the downside. Bitcoin itself down in the $97,000 range. However, the miners have really taken a U-turn here.
Yeah, we've seen that now for a sort of probably the start of this week, a significant pullback in the mining stocks. Bitcoin price hasn't changed too much, actually. We're approaching 100,000 today, reached 99,400. So, now before market opening, when we're planning our podcast, we had more of an upbeat podcast to do because the mining stocks were all green, and then literally, in the space of an hour or so, the market's just turned, and that's what can happen in this space. So we do tell you it's a very volatile asset class, and the Bitcoin miners are more volatile than Bitcoin price. So the Bitcoin price doesn't seem to have as many volatile days like it did in previous cycles at this point in time. In 2021, we saw some big movements up and down throughout that year, but we're not seeing major movements. I mean, if I look at the Bitcoin price now, it's literally 1.5% down today, but the mining stocks, on the other hand, are significantly down, significantly red.
Now, if we take a look at the mining stocks, Soluna Holdings, the only one that's standing up in the green right now, they came out with some news earlier in the week talking about approvals, the next step in one of their big projects, and an update on their hosting agreement with BIT Digital. So we have had some news from Soluna. However, all of the other miners, as you say, Anthony, down in the red, and in many cases, getting close to 5, 6, 7%.
If you take Soluna stock today, it's the only green miner at the moment, but that can change quite quickly in Bitcoin mining land. And if you look at the day range from its high of the day, it was at 165, so it's literally dropped 10% from its high, now at 150. So you had a stock there that was well over double digits in the green. And similar to a lot of other stocks, all those stocks in that board there were literally green 2 hours ago. So, as I say, a pullback with the Bitcoin price, 1 to 2% down, but the mining stocks, some of these 5, 6, 7 and higher in terms of percentage changes. So Not a great day for Bitcoin mining, but we're in here for the long haul, not for the day-to-day trades. And we are apparently we're in a bull cycle. So if we follow previous cycles, 2025 should follow 2021 and 2017 and 2013, and those previous periods was a bull cycle for Bitcoin. So we spoke about expectation from a lot of the analysts out there that the Bitcoin price could reach 250,000 by the end of this year. Well, at the moment, it's sort of 97,000 and holding in that sort of range. So it's needs a bit of a push to get it through the six digits again, and then on to all-time highs going forward. But Friday we've got the weekend where Bitcoin price still manages to trade, obviously 365 days, but the mining stocks will take a breather tonight until Monday morning.
They certainly will. Now, we've talked a lot about waiting for this big positive catalyst to take us to that next level. Widely anticipated that the strategic Bitcoin reserve could act as that catalyst. However, this morning, Anthony, we got a catalyst on the other end of the spectrum. Big news out of BYBIT. This is a Canadian exchange that was hacked for around $1.4 billion worth of Ethereum. So this actually marks the largest crypto hack ever in history by dollar value. Now, I saw they were going on a live stream to talk about the intricacies, exactly what happened. I've also seen the hackers are starting to move that Ethereum around, converting it over to Solana. So very difficult to obviously unwind and unpack what's happened in the last few hours, but this is having a big impact on both the price of Bitcoin, as you just mentioned, pulling back around $3,000 per coin, and the Bitcoin miners as this uncertainty or fear FUD continues to creep into the market.
Yeah, and a bigger impact on Ethereum, to be honest. So, Bitcoin down, just probably about 1.5% on the day, but Ethereum's closer to 3% on the day. So it has pulled back significantly. And as I say, 2 hours ago, Ethereum was heading all the way, up to $2,850. And it's just it's not great news. Hopefully they can follow the trail and recover this. Generally, we find that a lot of hacks do get recovered because there's such an audit trail out there for them to follow all the way through. Obviously, speed is of the essence to if they're getting moved from exchange to exchange. This is going to be the challenge, but there is a direct audit trail to follow all the way back. It's just obviously from a time perspective.
Yeah, there most definitely is. So we'll wait to find out the news or outcome there. Interesting how closely crypto, Bitcoin, the miners are all commingled here, though, Anthony. Aside from Bit Digital, really very limited exposure to Ethereum. Obviously, no exposure to BYBIT by the miners themselves, but responding to this negative catalyst this morning in a big way. So with that being said, now let's talk about some of the more positive news here, Anthony, some of the bigger picture macro trends and why we're not necessarily overly concerned about this FUD this morning. Now, we just got off the DeepSeek news a few weeks ago. Obviously, that has gone fairly silent. I haven't heard anything about DeepSeek since that initial scare. This one, again, interesting how this always seems to happen on a Friday or Monday around the weekend, but again, causing a lot of panic. Now, if we zoom out, one of the main factors we've been watching is the M2 money supply. So this basically tracks the amount of money in circulation globally. You can look at this on a country basis as well, but this continues to grow, Anthony, and essentially the exact opposite of what Bitcoin stands for, as there's only 21 million Bitcoin. That's a fixed cap. However, with money or fiat money, they can continue to print that, and that's exactly what we're seeing here.
Yeah, we're seeing now a significant increase in the last few years in the M2 money supply. So potentially some of that could flow into Bitcoin. If that happens, like we've talked about with the ETFs, Bitcoin correlated stocks, there's a lot of potential to improve the share prices that we're seeing at the moment from a Bitcoin price and from a Bitcoin mining perspective.
There certainly is. Now, if you recall during COVID, all the COVID checks or stimulus checks that went out, a lot of that made its way into crypto, Bitcoin, and altcoins. Now they're talking about this Doge or Department of Government Efficiency rebate of up to $5,000. So interesting, as you say, Anthony, as more money, more fiat currency is injected into the system, many times that finds its way into either investments, crypto, Bitcoin, as we've seen in prior cycles. Now, another great opportunity we're seeing for Bitcoin here is in terms of the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now, it's been fairly quiet from Senator Loomis in terms of the national or federal strategic Bitcoin reserve. She's actually listed as a speaker next week at the Bitcoin Investor Week in New York. So looking forward to getting an update from her. However, at a state level, we're seeing adoption and advancement really at a breakneck speed. So interestingly enough, this chart shows, I guess, the pipeline in terms of adoption for these strategic Bitcoin reserves. And it's none other than Utah that's already in their second chamber meeting nearly at the finish line.
Yeah, Utah. We mentioned Utah a couple of weeks ago when we were discussing the fact there was at least, nearly 20 states chasing strategic Bitcoin reserve, and Utah were the state that was further down the line than the others. And this diagram clearly shows that they're very close now to enacting a strategic Bitcoin reserve at the state level. There's a number of other states there also going through the process now, and we're only in sort of the second, third month since, or the second month since the inauguration, and things are moving ahead fairly quickly. So whether we can achieve strategic Bitcoin reserve at a national level within 6 months' time will tell, but certainly some of these states will have enacted that in that period.
Compass Mining makes Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone. Start mining in as little as 48 hours with our turnkey hardware, online and mining directly to your Bitcoin wallet within 2 business days. Find out more at compassmining.io and get started now. Most definitely. And another one that's really looking to front run the pack here is Texas. So Riot Platforms actually putting out an article entitled Why Texas Needs a Bitcoin Reserve. Pierre Rouchard, who's the vice president of research at Riot, was actually involved in the SBR hearing in Texas. Very interesting to see these companies, I know Marathon as well, playing a very active role in this adoption of Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. We've met Pierre at the Amsterdam Bitcoin conference last year, and we're hopefully getting him on the podcast in March. He's done a lot in the space, a lot of positive things, even outside of the work he does for Riot Platforms. He's a well-known person in the Bitcoin space, and yeah, we'll get him on the podcast and get more up-to-date news from what he's been working on specifically over these past few months.
We sure will. Now, you made reference to this chart earlier, Anthony. Interesting, Pierre actually was the one who posted this talking about the 4-year halving cycle. So this essentially looks at the amount of time that's elapsed since halving. You can see the yellow or orange line here is the 4th halving epoch that we're currently in. As Pierre mentions, we're in the worst performing bull run so far to date in the history of Bitcoin. However, he's still confident and really plays into that theme that you were mentioning, Anthony, in terms of patience, zooming out, allowing these macro catalysts to take hold, and really avoiding or ignoring that FUD at a day-to-day level.
Yeah, and that's what we've been saying along now for the last sort of 15 months on the channel as well, is, Bitcoin will do what Bitcoin does, but if you look at the progression since the creation over 15 years ago. And, yes, there's been pullbacks during that period, but generally the Bitcoin value rises consistently, and hopefully 2025 will be similar to the previous cycles. But yeah, this, if you notice, every cycle is not as good as the previous cycle. So that's also something to think about. But it's that all cycles have been extremely bullish in terms of where the Bitcoin price has gone during that period of the cycle in total.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up. And the big key differences, again, as we've discussed on the channel, the ETFs and this strategic Bitcoin reserve, we both feel like the adoption, the demand for Bitcoin is quite fundamentally different in this cycle. But it will be interesting to see in terms of timelines here how this all plays out. The final piece of news we wanted to cover, Anthony, perhaps the biggest Bitcoin maxi in the world, Michael Saylor, his strategy or newly named company Strategy B is unwavering in their focus on Bitcoin. They've come out stating they want to raise up to $2.5 billion worth of additional Bitcoin. This would work out to around 25,000 coins given today's price, giving them in excess of 500,000 Bitcoin, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean this is quite significant for one public organization to hold that amount of Bitcoin. I mean, 500,000 is going to be heading closer and closer towards 3%, probably well over 2.5%, getting towards 3% of every Bitcoin that's ever been produced. And if you start discounting the amount of Bitcoin that potentially could have been lost over the last 15 years, and estimates of that are around about maybe 3 to 4 million Bitcoin has been lost, and Strategy's value in terms of how many Bitcoin they hold in their treasury starts becoming, significantly higher, maybe heading towards 4 to 5% of every Bitcoin that's ever going to be created. So, I mean, we've talked about this before. It's on one side it's really positive, and on the other side it's like, the whole point about Bitcoin, it's decentralized, so everyone can have a piece of it. Well, MicroStrategy have got a massive piece of the cake, and time will tell.
It certainly will. And a good question that was brought up today, what if MicroStrategy or BlackRock ever were to be hacked, as we've seen this morning with BYBIT, with that amount of Bitcoin on balance sheet? It does raise a lot of questions, Anthony. However, Michael Saylor continuing to execute on that strategy. Finally, we see institutional ownership in the miners continuing to grow right alongside. So that's probably the most bullish or reassuring piece of this story for me, Anthony. Despite all of this fear, uncertainty, doubt, Bitcoin again holding relatively strong in that mid to high $90,000 range. However, the Bitcoin miners, as you say, highly volatile, and these institutions are taking advantage of this fear in retail.
Yeah, they are. They're buying up these stocks very cheap. They're probably orchestrating some of the price change as well to get the weak hands to sell their shares. But looking at that chart there, CleanSpark, heading towards 40% of all the shares now are owned by institutions. And when you go back to 2021 last cycle there, there wasn't many of these miners held with any significant amounts by any of the institutions. So yeah, it's food for thought. I mean, I've not sold any Bitcoin, but I have sold shares in some of the mining stocks over that period. But equally, I've made a lot of purchases in that period there. So it's all a case of do your due diligence, look at the fundamentals, have a view at what the technical analysis looks like as well. Give credit to some of those people that spend a lot of time putting that together, but don't just do one in isolation. There's a lot of work involved in looking at these companies before you start making a purchase, and you should be doing that due diligence. What we provide is just a sort of like a starting point. This is not watch the video here and then go out and sort of buy stocks. We're not here to do that. We don't give price targets. We don't give price targets on Bitcoin. Can't say what the Bitcoin price is going to be tomorrow, next week, next month, whenever. But we rely on other people to sort of give us that from their point of view, and we'll highlight that on the podcast, and then we'll see how it works out. But it's interesting with the institutions here. We've noticed a lot of updates from a lot of the other miners as well, saying they're significantly being acquired by institutional owners as the prices appear to be. And I say that appear to be, a value play now for some of these mining stocks when you consider potentially what their earnings results will be like in 2025, as most of them are going out and buying the most efficient mining machines and attracting energy prices, certainly around the 3 cents level from what we've seen already with earnings reports from IREN coming out.
Most definitely. And even once you start to strip out the Bitcoin mining division itself, as we've done with Core Scientific, these stocks looking like a good value investment, even based on their infrastructure and the value of this HPC AI data center infrastructure that they've now built or created for themselves. You also brought up the fact that a number of Bitcoin have been lost, Anthony. I heard a story that that chap in the UK is now looking to buy the landfill. They're actually decommissioning it. So he's continuing on his quest. And also an interesting point on the institutional ownership with CleanSpark. I think it was Rex Finance that put out a tweet the other day saying, just as you did, Anthony, with up to 40% institutional ownership, I think he said 27% short interest and 3 or 4% insider ownership, it really doesn't leave a lot of shares out there just for the general retail public. And that's exactly where you get those big short squeeze situations when retail attention comes back to this space, tries to pile in, and there just aren't shares available for sale. We saw that with TeraWulf as well, as I think around 40% of their float is held by insiders. So time will tell how this all works out. Once again, similar to DeepSeek, Anthony, we are not too concerned about the BYBIT hack. Unfortunate, of course, and not the type of press release we need going into the news, but it may present another great buying opportunity, again, if you've got some dry powder on the sidelines. So with that being said, you guys, let us know how you're feeling here today. We're off to New York tomorrow. We're going to be out there for Bitcoin Investor Week, continuing to do our interviews. We've got Jason Less, CEO of Riot Platforms, lined up for their Q4 earnings interview. We've got Jeff LaBerge, head of capital markets and strategic initiatives from Bitdeer. And we've just reached out this morning to Core Scientific to see if we can have Adam on either Thursday or Friday. So a very busy week, no shortage of news. We'll see you back here Monday.